HR is not there to help you. HR is there to protect the company. And if you don't know the difference between the two, then you already behind. Because most people find out what HR actually does in the worst moments of their career. You can have spent 20, 30 years inside of a company, inside of an industry, doing a job, and in the blink of an eye, you're in front of your manager with HR sitting across the hallway, coming inside to document you out. That's not an accident. That's actually the play. Now, HR is not the enemy. HR is just doing their job. I've sat in those rooms as an executive, and I know what's said behind closed doors from the managers, from the leadership, from the executives. This show exists so that you know the inside play, and I built this because someone has to say it out loud. If HR has ever been at your desk, if there was ever a pit with your name on it, if you have ever been under investigation, in a letter of caution, in some type of improvement process or plan, then you don't know how it actually ends. And if something was said or repeated and you push back and now the environment shifts. So if you brought up something about breaking a law, rule, or regulation, and now all of a sudden management is treating you another way, they're taking assignments from you, they're removing you from email listings, they're realigning the organization and your duties and giving it to other people. So you have less of a seat at the actual table, less visibility, then you're not paranoid. You're reading it correctly and you just don't know what move comes next. So let me give you an example, right? I had a client who had a formal accommodation in place, documented, approved, and the accommodation was the capacity and the ability to record meetings. So that means any meeting that came in, whether it was a Zoom meeting, an in-person meeting, even a phone call, the employee was approved to record all of those discussions with their manager and their peers and otherwise because they had a processing disability. So it was an undue hardship and the company approved that accommodation. So what happened is a new supervisor came in, the accommodation gets removed. Performance all of a sudden starts to get documented, starts to get flagged. Next thing you know, my client had a PIP that came on their table. A termination was in the process of coming, not because it was warranted, but because the accommodation wasn't in place. And by the time I got involved, by the time the client actually contacted me, HR had already built 18 months of documentation and everything pointed to performance. It had nothing to actually do with performance at all. It had to do with them removing the accommodation from the file, disallowing my client to actually record the meeting. So my name is Noël and I'm a strategic case architect. I spent 30 years inside of executive HR and I was in a room where the termination discussions happened, in the rooms where it was decided who got promoted, who got let go, who got reassigned, who they wanted in the door, who they wanted out of the door. I was in all the conversations with the executive leaderships at the highest level of my entire career, at the highest levels that anybody can go in my career. I was in those rooms and I helped write the actual documentation framework that companies use today to build cases against employees. I know what the strategy looks like because I wrote the strategy, I built it, and I know what it looks like from the employer side because that's exactly what I did. Then, because I started teaching employees exactly what I taught the leadership, the system always turned on me every single time. Why? Because the system and the companies didn't want me to teach employees exactly what I'm teaching you now, how to protect yourself, how to defend yourself, how to look and read through the lines to know what your rights are. They didn't want me to do that. So the system turned on me too. So I navigated myself on both sides. I've been through federal EEO. I've been through the district court. I've done things pro se. I've done things with attorneys, without an attorney. I've done it all. So I have both sides of the aisle in my back corner because I've actually lived in this experience. But I'm not a coach and I'm not a counselor, and I am an architect inside of the strategy that you're already in, because attorneys don't know your rights, right? And I always have an issue with attorneys. A lot of my clients come to me who already have attorneys and they've already spent thousands and thousands of dollars and they're hesitant to even come and spend another dollar because their attorney has made promises or done things that said would get results, and it never panned out that way. It doesn't work out that way. way, because an attorney can just tell you their rights, but they can't tell you what's on the other side of the documentation or strategic planning in a strategic way and how to position yourself before you even need the attorney. They can't tell you that. The attorney comes in at the end, on the back end, and that's where the gaps get lost. That's where the cases get lost, because attorneys are trying to pick up, they're trying to fix something without having an architecture there. It's as if you're trying to build a house, you're trying to see a house being built without the infrastructure. So you can't put up the walls, you can't build because the building itself, you can't build the building without the infrastructure, without the land, without the ground. And that's what I do. I build the ground so that anything that comes on top of that is solid and is secure and is strong. Because your enemy, right? So I'm not here to trash HR. I am here to tell you what's behind the closed doors, because you deserve to know. Because I've watched over 22,000 career arcs. I know what happens, when things end badly. I know what happens when people go in and they say too much, they don't say enough. When they're silent at the wrong time, they talk at they should be talking at a different time and they don't do that. And most of it is avoidable. And that's not a generalization. That's actually the facts. It is pattern recognition based on 3 decades of being inside of it myself. I build the cases against employees. I build the cases for employees. I know how to dismantle those cases. And these are not the skill sets that most people have, because most people don't have both, and most people don't have my lived experience being on both sides of the aisles myself. And this show is not about HR best practices. It is a show about real situations, real workplace problems, real workplace scenarios that are happening to people, happening to you, maybe happening to a family member, a coworker, a good friend, but happening, or maybe it's even happening to something that happened in another job and you just couldn't figure out what is going on. But that is what I talk about. I talk about real situations that are happening inside of the workplace, happening at every stage, and what move to make that is right and what move to make that may be wrong, that may completely position you out and make you lose your job, your career, your sanity, your health insurance, and everything else that is attached to you having and being gainfully employed. So it's not what HR says is happening. I talk about what actually is happening. I pull the curtains back and I tell you exactly what those conversations mean and how to look and how to guide through them, so you know how to come out on the other side. Season 1 starts with the pit. It ends with termination and every stage in between. So full episodes drop on May 31st, and I plan to do it weekly after that. So if you already inside of a situation, a pit, an investigation, anything that's active right now, and you don't have to wait until May 31st for this information. You can already go to hr-armor.com/links, and you'll have every path on that page that'll route you to the right next step ahead based on where you are right now, based on your situation right now. So subscribe wherever you are, wherever you listen to podcasts. And if this landed, share it with a friend who needs it. This is HR Armor, when work turns against you. And I'm Noel. You file, I architect. I'll see you soon.